Stop whatever you're doing right now. I don't care if you're on the subway, in the bathroom, or having dinner with your family. This can't wait. Because what I'm about to tell you today is one of those things that splits your life into a before and an after. One of those things that 2 years from now, you're going to look back and say, damn, Carter warned me and I didn't listen. Or you're going to say, thank God I watched that video. Thank God I was awake while everyone else was sleeping. It's up to you. January 21st, 2026. Carter here. And look, I've been doing this for years. Years telling you to stack physical metal, to get out of the system, that silver is the most manipulated and undervalued asset on the planet. And I still believe that. That hasn't changed. I'm not going to come here and sell you smoke or betray everything we've been building together as a community. But today, I got to tell you something that's literally kept me up at night, something that's forced me to rethink certain things. And when I say rethink, I don't mean throwing my silver stack out the window. I mean opening my eyes to something that's happening right now, at this very moment, while you and I are talking. Something the mainstream media isn't covering. And you know why they're not covering it? Because they're too busy hypnotizing you with gold at $4,700 and silver brushing up against 100. Pretty headlines. Charts going up. The precious metals party. Everyone looking at the finger while the moon is somewhere else entirely. And meanwhile, while you're staring at those charts, the most powerful corporations on the planet are doing something completely different. They're accumulating another metal, quietly, off the public market, like rats abandoning a ship that nobody knows is sinking yet. They've called us crazy for years, you and me, conspiracy theorists, boomers obsessed with shiny metals, doomsday preppers. Well, today, those same people who laughed at us are signing multi-million-dollar contracts to secure exactly what we've been preaching all along. That physical metals matter, that supply matters, that when the music stops, there won't be enough chairs for everyone. The difference is, they're not buying gold or silver, they're buying something else. And after this video, you're going to know exactly what, exactly why, and exactly how to position yourself before the rest of the world wakes up. Exactly 6 days ago, January 15th, Amazon Web Services signed a deal with Rio Tinto. Stop. I need you to understand what I just said because it sounds like one of those boring corporate news items you skim over, but it's anything but that. I'm not talking about Amazon, the store where you buy socks at 3 in the morning when you can't sleep. I'm talking about AWS, Amazon Web Services, the invisible infrastructure that holds up half the internet. The servers where Netflix lives, where Spotify lives, where half the websites you visit every day live without you even knowing they depend on them. Those people. They signed a 2-year contract to secure copper supply. But here's what left me cold, and I need you to pay attention. They didn't buy it through the LME, which is the London Metal Exchange where copper is supposedly traded. They didn't buy it through the COMEX, they bought it directly from the mine. Direct. No middlemen, no exchanges, no public market. From the ground to their warehouses. Think about what that means. Imagine you're the CEO of Amazon. You've got literally all the money in the world. You can buy whatever you want, whenever you want, at whatever price you want. And instead of going to the supermarket like everyone else, you decide to go directly to the farmer, sign a 2-year contract, and tell him, I don't care what it costs, you just make sure my food shows up. That's what Amazon just did. With copper. That's wartime behavior. That's the behavior of someone who knows scarcity is coming. I want you to do a mental exercise with me, because this one's gonna stick with you. Imagine you're the head of procurement at Amazon Web Services. You show up to the office on a Monday, still half asleep. $8 coffee in hand because even coffee is expensive in Seattle. You sit down at your desk with a view of the city, and your team presents you with a report that says, Boss, to build the data centers we need, we're going to need millions of tons of copper. You open the spreadsheet. You look at global supply. You look at the timelines for new mines. You look at market inventories. And the numbers don't add up. There simply isn't enough copper for everyone who's going to need it. What do? Wait for the market to magically fix itself? Trust that Goldman Sachs is right and everything's going to be fine? Or do you pick up the phone, call Rio Tinto, and say, I don't care about the price. We sign now and secure supply before the competition does? That's exactly what Amazon did. They're not speculating, they're not playing weekend trader, they're treating copper exactly how we treat our silver, securing physical metal before it disappears. Welcome to the club, Amazon. We've been here for years. And they're not alone. Samsung is doing the same thing with OpenAI on the $500 billion Stargate project. Microsoft, Meta, Google, all in a quiet and desperate race to secure a metal that 5 years ago nobody cared about. The question is obvious. What the hell do they know that you and I don't? What have they seen in their internal models that made them go into panic mode? Wait, before I answer that, let me give you the data point that literally knocked me out of my chair. S&P Global, which isn't some conspiracy theorist YouTube channel like mine, but one of the most serious and boring financial institutions on the planet, just published a report. And in that report, they use some very specific words. Words you'd never see in a corporate document unless things were extremely serious. I quote, systemic risk to civilization. Systemic risk to civilization. That's not Carter, the internet lunatic who talks about metals from his bedroom, saying that. That's S&P Global in an official damn report about copper. 10 million metric tons of projected deficit by 2040. 10 million. Current global demand is 28 million. More than a third of what the world needs to function is going to be missing. A third? And everyone's looking at gold. And here we get to the point I want you to burn into your brain. The thesis that summarizes this entire video in one sentence. The sentence you're going to remember 5 years from now when this thing explodes, and everyone asks how they didn't see it coming. Copper is the new gold. Stop. I know what you're thinking. Carter's lost his mind. Carter sold his soul to the copper miners. Carter wants me to dump my silver and get into some other weird thing. No, listen to me carefully. I'm not telling you to sell your gold. I'm not telling you to dump your silver. I'm not going to sell mine. What I'm telling you is that there are two kinds of gold in this world, and they've only told us the story of one. There's the gold of fear, and there's the gold of construction. Traditional gold, the yellow stuff, the one you've been buying for years, that's the gold of fear. You buy it when you don't trust the system. When you think the dollar's going to hell. When you want to preserve wealth for when everything collapses. And that's fine. I have some, you have some, we'll keep having it. That doesn't change. But copper is different. Copper is the gold of construction. It's the gold you don't buy to hide under your mattress. It's the gold you need for the world to keep functioning. This is the sentence I want you to remember. You buy gold when you're scared. You need copper to keep the lights on. Without copper, there's no artificial intelligence. Without copper, there's no electric cars. Without copper, there's no renewable energy. Without copper, there's no digital transformation. Without copper, we literally go back to the caves. Gold is a luxury, something that's nice to have. Copper is oxygen, something you need to breathe. And here's the key to everything. What happens when oxygen runs out? What happens when the math says there isn't enough for everyone? What happens when the biggest corporations on the planet start hoarding in secret while you're being distracted with other things? Exactly. Prices explode, and whoever wasn't positioned cries. Look at what happened this past year while everyone was looking the other way. Gold went up 66% in 2025. Incredible. Historic. The best year since 1979. All the headlines talking about it. Wall Street analysts congratulating each other like they discovered America when we've been saying it on this channel for years. But copper, quietly, like the patient assassin it is, went up 52%. And 2 weeks ago, without almost anyone noticing, it hit all-time highs of $13,387 per ton. All-time highs. On a metal that's supposedly boring. Did you see that in the news? Of course not, because the media cares more about gold that shines than copper that builds civilizations. But wait, if all this is so obvious, if the data is right there, if the S&P Global report is public, if the Amazon deal was in the Wall Street Journal, why the hell isn't anyone telling you about it? Why do you have to find out from some guy on YouTube with an avatar instead of from the financial experts who make millions? I'll tell you why. Because copper going up steadily doesn't sell. It doesn't generate clicks. It doesn't make people panic and share the article. One day gold goes up 3%. Headline. Goes down 2%. Headline. Drama, emotion, your aunt sharing on Facebook that the apocalypse is coming. That's engagement. That's ad revenue. Copper hitting all-time highs while nobody's watching is boring. Doesn't sell newspapers. Doesn't pay journalists salaries. That's how the system works, friend. But there's something else, and here we enter uncomfortable territory. The investment banks, the big ones, the ones who supposedly know about this stuff, the ones who charge obscene commissions to give you advice they don't even follow themselves, are sending completely contradictory messages. And it's not by accident, it's deliberate. Goldman Sachs publicly says there won't be a real copper deficit until 2029, that the market is balanced, that everyone should calm down, nothing to see here, go home. These are the same Goldman Sachs who said Bitcoin was a bubble when it was at $3,000. The same ones who didn't see 2008 coming when they had subprime mortgages blowing up in their faces. The same ones who make money no matter what while you lose. They're wrong more often than an octopus picking soccer matches. But hey, 8-figure bonuses every December. What a great job they've got. But then there's Citi, projecting a deficit of 308,000 tons already in 2026. And JP Morgan, saying copper is going to $12,500 in the second quarter, and Goldman itself, in a different report, saying copper will hit 15,000 by 2035. So which is it, banker boys? Is there a deficit or not? Is it going up or down? Are you going to get your story straight, or just keep getting paid to be wrong? I'll tell you what I think. I think they say one thing in public and do another in private. I think while Goldman tells you bedtime stories, their favorite institutional clients are accumulating. It's the same game as always. Keep you distracted with headlines while the rich position themselves. They've done it to us 1,000 times, and they'll keep doing it until we stop falling for it. But this time, I have proof. Data they can't manipulate because it's public. Let's talk about inventories, because this is where you see the full picture. COMEX inventories, which is the U.S. futures market, have quintupled in the last 12 months. Quintupled. They went from less than 100,000 metric tons to more than 503,000. 44 consecutive days of net inflows. 44 straight days of copper pouring into American warehouses nonstop. And you know why? Because the United States has announced 15% tariffs on refined copper for 2027 and 30% for 2028. American corporations are hoarding like crazy before it costs them more. So far you might think, well, there's plenty of copper then, inventories are going up. Wrong. A mistake everyone makes who only looks at half the data. While COMEX fills up, LME inventories, which are in London, the ones that supply the rest of the world, have dropped nearly in half in 1 year. Nearly in half. Do you understand what's happening? Copper is being sucked toward the United States like there's a black hole, and the rest of the world is running out of reserves. A Chinese analyst from Chaos Ternary Futures said it better than me. Inventories used to act as a safety cushion, but now they're locked up in the United States. So the cushion has disappeared, and everyone's going to have to fight over what's left. Fight over copper. In 2026. This isn't theory. This isn't speculation. This is what the official data says that anyone can look up. And meanwhile, Goldman Sachs telling you the market is balanced. It's almost a joke. Now the million-dollar question. Why does everyone suddenly need so much copper? 3 letters. AI. Artificial intelligence. I know you're sick of hearing it. ChatGPT over here, Gemini over there. Every CEO saying AI will change the world, while they lay off half their workforce. But what nobody tells you is what AI needs to work in the real world. Not algorithms. Not data. Physical infrastructure. Data centers the size of stadiums filled with servers that consume more electricity than entire cities and run so hot they need nuclear reactor-level cooling. And all of that runs on copper. Here's the stat I want you to remember. A normal data center, from the old days, uses between 5,000 and 15,000 tons of copper. But an artificial intelligence data center, a hyperscale from Amazon or Google, can use up to 50,000 tons. 50,000 for a single building. A building full of chips that, without constant cooling, would turn into puddles of melted silicon. And then politicians tell you the planet's problem is that you use plastic straws. The hypocrisy would be funny if it wasn't so insulting. Morgan Stanley just published that data centers alone will consume 740,000 tons this year. And by 2027, more than 1 million, just data centers. But that's not all. Every electric car that rolls off the line carries 80 kilograms of copper. 80. A regular gas car carries 20, 4 times more copper per electric vehicle. And we're not talking about a niche market. We're talking about every manufacturer on the planet committing to electrify their fleets in the next 10 to 15 years. That's 80 million cars a year globally. If just half of them are electric by 2035, do the math. Millions of additional tons of copper just so people can get to work. And then there's renewables. Every one of those giant wind turbines you see in the countryside carries about 8 tons of copper. Every megawatt of solar energy needs between 5 and 12 tons. And the International Energy Agency says we need to triple renewable capacity by 2030 just to meet climate goals. Triple, with the copper we don't have. This is what I need you to understand because it's the core of everything. Artificial intelligence isn't magic floating in a cloud. AI is copper. It's cables. It's transformers. It's physical infrastructure that somebody has to build with materials. Somebody has to dig out of the ground. And the ground doesn't have infinite copper. It has what it has. The math is simple. Ore grades have fallen 30% since 2000. Miners are moving a third more rock to get the same copper. The easy stuff is already gone. And bringing a new mine online takes between 12 and 15 years. 12 to 15 years of permits, protests, and bureaucracy. The last new mine in the United States, the one that's going to supply Amazon, is the first in more than a decade. 1 mine in 10 years. In the richest country on the planet. With all the demand that's coming, the big numbers so you don't forget them. Current demand, 28 million tons per year. Projected demand, 2040, 42 million, a 50% increase. But there aren't enough mines in development. The pipeline is empty. And recycling isn't going to save us. Yes. Copper is recyclable. Yes, 30% comes from scrap. But recycled copper doesn't have the purity for AI applications. You can't melt down old pipes and expect them to cool an NVIDIA server. Metallurgy doesn't work that way. It's basic physics. If this content is opening your eyes, if you're seeing something you hadn't considered, hit that like button. It's free, takes a second, and it tells me I'm not just preaching in the desert, that we're a community. That we're awake while everyone else sleeps. Now I want to talk to you about something professional traders have been watching for months and nobody in the mainstream mentions because it requires thinking for more than 2 minutes. The copper to gold ratio. This is a tool used to understand where institutional money is rotating. The concept is simple. You divide the price of copper by the price of gold and watch what happens. When the ratio goes up, it means copper is rising faster than gold. And that indicates the market is shifting from defensive mode to offensive mode, from protecting what you have to building new things. From fear to growth. When the ratio drops, it's the opposite. Gold rises more than copper, people are scared, looking for shelter, preparing for the worst. Think of it as a thermometer of economic optimism. Well, the copper to gold ratio is right now at 50-year lows. 50 years. Half a century. Last time it was this low, Nixon had just resigned over Watergate, your dad was wearing bell-bottoms, and people were dancing to disco music. That kind of extreme level is historically unsustainable. Always, in all recorded history since this has been measured, always it has reverted, no exceptions. And when it reverts, it means copper starts rising faster than gold in a sustained way for years. Not weeks, years. And here's the paradox that fascinates me and proves something big is happening. Gold is at all-time highs. Silver is at all-time highs. Precious metals have never been better. Fantastic for those of us who've been stacking for years. But the ratio is telling us the rotation toward industrial metals has already begun. Both things can be true at the same time. Precious metals can keep rising while copper rises even faster. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. And it's exactly what institutions are already positioning for while we debate in the YouTube comments. All right, Carter, that's all great, but what do I do with this information? First things first, this is not financial advice, it's educational entertainment. I'm not a certified advisor of anything. If you lose money listening to some guy on the internet with an avatar, that's your responsibility and yours alone. That said, here's how I see it. First, this isn't a trade for tomorrow. Copper isn't going to pull a GameStop and shoot up 300% in a week. This is a structural cycle that's going to unfold over years, probably the entire next decade. So the mentality has to be different. Long-term strategic positioning, not short-term speculation. Second, don't abandon precious metals. In fact, I think that would be a serious mistake. Gold and silver are still your insurance against monetary chaos. Your refuge. Your protection for when everything goes to hell. I'm not going to sell my silver. I've spent too many years accumulating it, too many arguments with family members who thought I was crazy, too many nights researching to change strategy now. But copper deserves a spot on your radar. And if the thesis is correct, if we're really looking at a structural deficit that S&P Global calls a systemic risk to civilization, the upside potential is historic. What you need to watch from now on: first, LME inventories. If they keep falling while COMEX keeps rising, that confirms copper is being hoarded by the United States and the rest of the world is left without a cushion. Second, physical premiums over futures. If you start seeing physical copper, the real stuff, costing way more than paper copper on the futures market, that means there's real scarcity that derivatives don't reflect. Third, more direct deals between big tech and miners. If Amazon was the first but more start appearing, the race has officially begun and you should know before the mainstream does. As for how to get exposure, there's an ETF called COPEX, the Global X Copper Miners, that gives you exposure to the world's major copper miners in a single ticker. Nobody's paying me to say that. It's not an ad. It's simply the most accessible way I know to get exposure to the sector without betting it all on a single company doing well. Do your research. Do your own analysis. Draw your own conclusions. I give you the information. You decide what to do with it. And this is what I want you to take away when you close this video and go back to your life. They've called us crazy for years. You, me, everyone who stacks physical metal. Everyone who distrusts the system. Everyone who believes tangible assets matter more than numbers on a screen. Well, Amazon just proved us right. The most valuable corporation on the planet is doing exactly what we've been preaching for years, securing physical supply before it disappears. The only difference is they're doing it with copper at a scale of billions, and we've been doing it with silver buying ounce by ounce. But the principle is identical. Physical metal matters. Supply matters. When the math says there isn't enough for everyone, those who got there first win, and those who got there late cry. It's always been that way. It always will be. Remember this phrase: gold protects you from collapse. Copper positions you for what comes after. Gold is your insurance, your bunker, your protection. But copper is your ticket to the world being built right now with artificial intelligence, electric cars, and renewable energy. That world, whether we like it or not, is made of copper. And while the media writes obituaries for the commodity supercycle, while Wall Street analysts get it wrong once again, while people stay hypnotized by empty headlines, the most powerful corporations on the planet are wiring the future with the only metal that can't be printed, can't be hacked, can't be faked, and can't be substituted. A metal in structural deficit, a metal that S&P Global says is a systemic risk to civilization, a metal that hit all-time highs without almost anyone noticing. They called us crazy for stacking physical metal. Today, Amazon is doing exactly the same thing. He who laughs last, laughs best. The question isn't gold or silver. The question isn't dollar or Bitcoin. The question is, do you want the metal of the past or the metal of the future? The future belongs to those who see it coming, and we're seeing it. Carter here. See you in the next one.